Welcome back to the podcast, HOA Hell. I'm your host, Michael Kushner, and with me today is Senior Associate at MBK Chapman, Sam Kill. Sam, welcome back again.
Hi, Mike. Great to be with you.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that you're very familiar with. Obviously, you're in the trenches every day, and that is the 5200 demand.
Oh, yeah.
As we call it. And it is, I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying it's a hidden gem. It's one of the most powerful tools that homeowners have to assure themselves that their HOAs are being held accountable.
Absolutely.
And it is wide-reaching and it is powerful. And when I say wide-reaching, and let me define what I mean by that. So for those of you out there, the 5200 demand is the Davis Sterling Act's version of what a homeowner is entitled to in terms of documents from the corporation. I will say now that the documents that homeowners are entitled to under the Davis Sterling Act are much more varied and wide array than shareholders are, minority shareholders, let's say, are in a regular corporation or minority membership holders in an LLC. In other words, you know, if you're a minority shareholder or LLC member and you maybe have 5%, 10%, you have a right to certain financials, but it's pretty limited compared to what we've got here. 5200 of the Civil Code really is broad. And I like to say if it relates in any way to how the HOA is spending your money or what the HOA is doing to collect your money, you have a right to see it. There are very few exceptions. Attorney-client privilege material being the biggest one. And discipline issues, you know, with other homeowners, or things that are private that you're not entitled to unless
collection matters.
Right.
Sorts of
Within the confines of a lawsuit, you might be under discovery, but this is without a lawsuit. This is purely, I'm a homeowner, I live in this HOA, give me. And it is, I call it the hidden gem because there are, not only is this one of the few statutes where a homeowner has a big array of rights, but the penalties for noncompliance are actually real.
Indeed. Absolutely.
And substantial. So that's what we're talking about today. It's that hidden gem. I'm going to tell you guys what it is, why it is, and how to take advantage of it. Okay? And what happens when the HOA plays games, because they do all the time, and it's actually a lot of fun. Okay? Not to you, but to us it is, because they aren't allowed to do that. So, Civil Code 5200, okay? If you read it carefully, and it's written in legislative legalese, but if you read it carefully, you can see just how many documents you're entitled to, okay? So let's talk about the things you're entitled to, okay? As a homeowner living in your HOA, you have a right to all the bank statements for any bank that's, you know, any account that's in the name of your corporation, okay, into your HOA's corporation. Bank records include things like bank statements, canceled checks, bank summaries, summary of assets, for example, income and expense statements for the corporation, contracts and invoices, contracts from vendors, contractors, the garden, the people that do the landscaping, whatever. If you guys have a community pool, the pool people, those contracts, your parking enforcement company, your guard gate company, whatever, you're allowed to see the contracts and all the invoices. So you see what's being paid, okay? You're entitled to reimbursement requests. Sometimes board members have to expend personal funds. A great way that crooked board members can get money from the HOA is to submit fake requests, but you get to see those. So all those reimbursement requests, you get to see them, okay? Reserve studies, reserve study reports, reserve study summaries. I mean, everybody gets that as part of the year-end requirements that you're entitled to under 5300. But you're entitled to see the actual reserve studies and their completion, right? The full ones that are in existence. Meeting minutes for the open board meetings, those monthly meetings. The agendas for those meetings, as well as the agendas for the executive session meetings. Now, you're not entitled as a non-board member to executive session minutes, but you are entitled to the executive session agenda. And that has to be produced in advance of the meeting, just like it does in advance of the open meeting, whatever is going to be discussed at the open meeting. Election rules and election procedures, any instructions given to an inspector of elections. You're allowed to see all that. You're allowed to see, obviously, governing documents. That goes without saying.
Right.
You're allowed to ask for an attorney-client fee agreement. So if your HOA has employed a law firm, you can ask for the fee agreement to see what the hourly rates are. You're not going to get the invoices because that has privileged material on it, like how time was spent. You won't get that. But you can get the fee agreements. You are also entitled to the addresses and names of all the members in your HOA and their email addresses to the extent that individuals have not opted out of the email part. But that's an affirmative duty. You have to opt out. Now, of all the things I just talked about, and there's probably some more, I'm sure Sam's going to have something to say in a minute, but of all the ones that I've mentioned, the only one that there's a means test for, the only one that you have to provide some basis for is that last one, membership. They can ask you what you want it for. Now, you should never have to answer that. You should just volunteer at the beginning. If it's one of the things you're requesting, I always explain why. I want it because I want to send a newsletter out to all the homeowners discussing how our community is being run. That's legitimate.
And that's proper cause as a member.
Oh, absolutely. Right. You could even say, I want to tell everybody about how bad a job you guys are doing.
Right.
And that is proper cause. What you can't do is get it because, I want to pitch my business.
You can't solicit. Right.
Yeah. I want to do it for solicitation purposes.
No commercial purposes.
You can't do that.
Right.
So they can deny you that. Now, did I leave anything off? Because there's more.
I mean, there are quite a few more, but the big one that comes to mind, I'm not sure if we touch on that, is federal and state tax returns.
Income tax statements, right. The income tax returns, you're entitled to those.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else off the top of your head that I forgot to mention?
Just in terms of that last one, the membership one, it's a qualified, I don't know if we want to get into that just yet, but a qualified, nuances in terms of their response deadline. So it's a more heightened.
Well, I'll get to deadlines in a minute.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten there yet. Right. So you're jumping ahead. But the bottom line is I just mentioned a few things, but it's a very wide statute. And when you think about just financial documents alone or enhanced financial documents, just the degree of records that entails from everything from an income and expense statement to I don't know, if your HOA is trying to get a loan and they've got to do, these little audited financials, you're entitled to all that stuff, anything like that. And then there's all these non-financial related documents you're entitled to. It's just, it's broad. Now, let's talk about deadlines. Okay. For when it comes to membership lists, they have 5 days to turn it over to you. Okay. Financial documents for the current fiscal year. So if among the documents I'm asking for are this year's, I want bank statements from 2025, January through the present, let's say. 10 days. Okay. Now, if I'm asking for bank statements from January 2025, and I'm asking for the last 2 years before that, 10 days for 2025, and then everything else is 30 days.
30 days, yep.
Okay. So that's your limit. It's 5, 10, 30. And it's very simple. There's only one thing that's 5, one thing that's 10, although one thing can be many things. It's one thing, which is current fiscal year, and then 30 for everything else. So I always lump it into the 30 unless there's a reason I want the membership, in which case I'll say, I'm okay with getting everything else, even current year, on the 30th day, but I want the membership list within 5 days. Okay? And 5200, you can serve this on any board member. You can serve it on the management company. You can serve it on the Secretary of State, whoever's designated as the agent for service. Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's proper. Okay? It is, we're going to talk about the power. It's powerful. Okay? Now, let's talk about timelines we just did, penalties, and gamesmanship. Okay? We're going to get into this more later, but the penalties, and this is one of the few statutes where the homeowner really is given a good amount of power here because of the penalties involved. So not only if you're forced to bring your HOA to court for either holding back certain documents that they were obligated to give you or not giving you anything, which you see less, but usually it's the former, you're going to get your attorney's fees back. Okay? You're entitled to your attorney's fees by statute. And it's almost a one-way statute. If you bring some sort of legal action to compel, and we're going to talk about the 3 different legal actions you can bring and why to bring one of them in terms of, and not the others. If you have to bring this legal action and you win, that is, they wrongfully withheld, you get your attorney's fees. If the court disagrees, for let's say, for example, some of the things you're asking for you weren't entitled to, it's not enough for you to lose for the HOA to get their attorney's fees. No. There has to be the court has to find that you basically brought the motion with no substantial justification, or brought the action with no substantial justification. And that's a much higher threshold to meet. And if you have just a semblance of good faith in your demand, which it should have, that will never happen. And so that's powerful right there. But now, so that's attorney's fees. You get those, they don't. Okay? Here's the better one. $500 statutory penalty for each request. Now, what does request mean? Well, it's ambiguous a little bit in the statute, so we take the ambiguity out. When we make our demands, let's say we have 20 separate categories. I want the minutes for the open board meetings. I want the agendas for the open board meetings. I want the minutes for or I want the agenda for the executive session. I want all check registers. I want canceled checks. And you get 20 categories of documents you want. And let's say they don't give you anything, just for the math. That's $500 times 20.
Right.
Okay? Right there. $500 times 20. That's a lot of cheddar. And it's pure penalty. So there is a real incentive built into the statute for the HOA to comply. And if the HOAs, if the boards, if their egos are in the way, they hate your guts and they don't want to give you this document, at least you would hope the attorney would be, guys, back up. Right. However, as we'll tell you in a minute, even then, you get some really dumb attorneys out there who play games and they end up doing their clients a big disservice. So what kind of games are we going to get? Give me some of the games that the HOAs play.
Well, this comes up less often when we do it professionally because we know how to cite to each specific statute. So let's
talk about that later. Pretend that it was a person writing it, just their own.
Yeah. So they will harp on word choice and they will deny, deflect, and delay. They will cite you.
We don't understand. We want to comply.
Right. So they buy themselves time. They really want to dissuade you from pressing the issue.
Right.
And every now and then we'll get people who walking through the doors or coming from consultation. They are quasi defeated. They almost on the verge.
It's been 4 months and they haven't gotten anything, or they've gotten a couple things like the governing documents, and that's it.
Exactly.
Or they asked for 2 years of bank statements and they got like 8 bank statements.
Right.
And they're missing what?
Or they cite to exorbitant fees and costs.
Yeah, we'll get to
which
that.
can really
we'll get to that.
Yeah, trouble a lot of folks there. So there's certain shenanigans that they engage in.
Well, let's talk about the delay, deflect, and deny.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. So we've had people write letters, and the letters are written in a layperson way, and lay people aren't trained like we are. I mean, most lawyers aren't trained like we are when it comes to this stuff. We know how to write this so that every demand is its own world, and every demand is strictly one thing, and we cite the specific statute, okay, that supports that specific category. But other people don't do that. Yeah. And so you might have a mix of things you're entitled to and what you're not. And so your HOA will write back, whoever, the lawyer or whatever, hey, man, we want to comply. We're good guys here. We're here to work with you. But just as written, we can't because it's ambiguous. You're asking for things you're not entitled to. Right. And you go back and forth with these people, and it's months. Yeah. Months. Because while your demand is still pending, that is, it's not really clearly written, it's ambiguous. I don't know if in their opinion, the timeline hasn't really started yet because they're trying to work with you to clarify. Right. But that is bad faith right there. It's also a result of sloppy work on the part of the layperson, but they know what they're doing and they know exactly what you're trying to get, and they'll play that game and they'll deny, deflect. What was the other one?
Deny.
No, deny, deflect, and delay.
Delay.
That's what it
there
was.
We go. Yeah.
I like the triplet that you had. Okay, so we're going to talk later about the do-it-yourself 5200, which is we recommend against it. But the fact is that they expect the gamesmanship, because before, if you have a very clean demand like ours, which is undeniable and unassailable, the threat of the penalties is kind of shrouded because they have a good faith argument that they're trying to comply. Yeah. You can't let them have that weapon, okay? Now, we talk about when we write our letter, for example, because we want to maximize, we make very clear that every single specific document request is a separate request under the code so that they're each subject to the $500 thing. That's something a lot of people don't do. We do that. And the people we've trained, the people I've trained, the lawyers I've trained in this area of the law have learned to do that from me. So that's one of our little things. But delay, deflect, deny, that's how the HOA operates. So let's talk about when you are faced with a delay, deflect, and deny argument, okay? If you've already written the letter and you did it yourself and you didn't do a great job, there's really not much you're going to be able to do to back off that other than to start over and come to us. Yeah. And then we'll start over and get things on the right track. And we've done that many times. People come to us. It's been 6 months. We take their letter. We announce to the other side, hey, disregard the request made on this date. This request is to be considered in and of itself brand new and fresh. And it's dated today. And that's where we start, okay? But let's say you haven't written the letter yet. You just know what you want. You want these documents. Here are the specifics of what the HOA will often say when they get your letter, okay? If they don't, let's say you worded it properly. Let's say you somehow managed to word it properly and you weren't being confusing, right? Well, here's another way. They can't really argue, oh, we're not sure what, we're trying to comply. They can't do that. So they might say, well, we'll get to it when we can. We're working on it. It's going to take some time. Really vague, but they can't do that. Yes, take the time you need, as long as it fits within the 5 days, 10 days, or 30 days that the code gives you, whichever the case may be, depending on what you asked for. So take as much time as you need up till that. Yeah. Because the day you pass that is the day that you are in violation of the statute. I don't care if the documents are actually kept in boxes and not on a computer in a room. And they're not alphabetized and they're not organized. Right. That's not my problem. That's your problem. That's a you problem. I want it now. Like Willy Wonka, the chocolate factory. I want it now. Sure. Okay? So don't let them get away with that. That's ridiculous. Well, we got to go and talk to...
Out of the board.
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel. Well, depending on who's responding, yeah.
Right? We got to go talk to our lawyer. We're not sure what we're supposed to give you. Right. Same response. Yeah, go ahead. Talk to your lawyer. As long as I get my membership list within 5 days, or I get my this year's fiscals within 10, if that's what I asked for, or I get everything else in 30. Yeah. Talk to your lawyer every day of the week. Don't care when you talk to him. Right. Give me my stuff and give it to me on time. Right? What else do we hear? I got to talk to the other board members.
We have management companies in transition. I get that occasionally.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah.
On day one, you have a management company, and then on another day, you don't. Right. There's no such thing as transition. There's always a management company involved. Right. For those that have management companies, okay? If your HOA has a management company and they're firing it and they're in transition, no, they're not. There's a bright line somewhere. On this day, this manager is doing it. On this day, this manager. Yeah, there might be some crossover where they're talking to each other, but there's only one manager. So that's a fake. That's completely fake.
Right. Okay. One that I've encountered a few times lately is they'll cite to a portal or website, but that's only partial. It's a partial response. So it's clearly withholding a whole category, subset of requests.
Right. So they'll say go to our portal. Let's say everybody knows what the portal is. Go to our portal. Well, the portal has the governing documents and a few other things.
Some minutes maybe, perhaps.
But it doesn't have all my bank records that I got. It doesn't have the rest of it. Exactly. So to say go to the portal is not enough. No. I'll go to the portal for the things that are there. Right. Okay. And by the way, do I have to?
No. No.
I could tell them, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I know what's in the portal. I'm not going to pull anything from the portal. Go and get me all those documents.
Right. And they can charge you a reasonable fee for that.
Well, we'll get to that. So let's talk about the fees. Yeah. Okay. They can charge you $10 an hour, no more, to go through the documents and collect them for you.
And redact them if necessary.
Yeah. Okay. They can charge you $10 an hour. Okay. So to the extent that they've got the documents, but they need to go through them to cross certain things out that might be private, they could charge you $10 an hour. That's the code. Okay. They can't charge you more than their actual production costs, copying costs, if that's what you're doing. Now, if they're electronic, there shouldn't be any copying costs. But let's say these are hard copies. And I'll always take electronic. Why kill the trees? If you can save paper, save paper, and it's easier. Okay, but let's say there's actual copying involved. they can charge you whatever they actually pay for copying. If they pay 7 cents a page, then they can charge you 7. If they pay 3 cents a page, they can charge you 3. And then there is this nebulous, and I think this really is a mistake in the code, and I think the legislature needs to shore this up, but there's this kind of miscellaneous nebulous thing where if, and this is often the case, unfortunately, but if they have to locate the documents and synthesize them, right?
Yep.
They can charge you a reasonable hourly fee.
Right.
Now, I don't know what's reasonable. It depends on a million circumstances. I've seen ones that try to charge you $150 an hour. To me, that's not reasonable.
Right.
That's not reasonable to me.
Or quoting you 30, 40 hours at $150.
Yeah, I don't think that's reasonable either, unless I'm asking for, thousands and thousands of pages and decades of documents, which you never are. You shouldn't be. Okay? So that would be manifestly unreasonable.
Right. Agreed.
I think I think 50, 75 bucks an hour is probably reasonable. Anything higher than that, I'm challenging it. Okay? I'm going to challenge it in court.
Absolutely.
But you do have to pay that, whatever. Let's say it was 50 or 75. You got to write them the check.
Right.
If it's a reasonable amount of time, if they need 10 hours to do it, that's probably reasonable. You're going to have to pay them that before they have to turn over the documents that are part of that. They can't withhold all the documents because not all of them are subject to that having to synthesize and search and that sort of thing. Like the governing documents should be right there. Okay. But other than those, copying, the hourly rate for redaction and just simply pulling versus synthesizing and locating.
Right.
Okay. Like if they have to go to storage, they can charge the higher hourly rate, whatever that is. But other than those 3 charges, that's it. They can't charge an administrative fee. They can't charge you a perusal fee. And they can't say, no, we're not going to let you copy it, but you can come in and inspect them. They can't do that.
Right.
Your right is to inspect and copy, or just copy. Okay? They also can do this. They can say, we're going to go ahead and make every record that you requested available to you, and you have to bring your own copy service in. They can do that.
Yeah.
They can do that if they want. In which case, great. And they can't say, oh, yeah, and that's going to be in, that's 100 miles away at this place. No, it's got to be
reasonable place of business.
It's got to be reasonable location to where the properties are, where the HOA is. Okay. Right. So that's their game playing. Excessive fees. Oh, we got to talk to our lawyer, or we're going to need time. That's all noise.
Right.
You can have time. 5, 10, 30 days. That's your time. Anything over that, I'm just going to court. So let's talk about what do I mean by going to court?
Okay.
Oh, I do want to mention one more thing. Another game that HOAs play, and unfortunately, a lot of them do it even though there's specifically a statute on point. So in 5215, so Civil Code 5215, I think it's Part D, there's a statute that basically says if the HOA is going to withhold a document based on some sort of privilege, or for whatever reason, they're withholding one, or they are redacting, they're blacking it out, okay? That they have to, upon your request, they have to give you they have to tell you what they redacted, not obviously word for word, because then there would be no point redacting. They got to tell you the nature of what they redacted or withheld. And they got to tell you why it was redacted or withheld, like the basis for the redaction or the withholding. Now, our letters, when I do a 5200 demand, I already have a whole section on 5215 that just says, to the extent that you withhold any document, redact any document, or are otherwise unable to produce any document, i.e., or e.g., the document doesn't exist, or it's been lost over time, or whatever, you must affirmatively identify every document that falls into one of those categories and tell me why in compliance with 5215D. That's what I put, okay? And the reason I do that is this game they play. They hand you ask for documents that you should be getting 1,500 pages, let's say. And they send you a big packet. It's like 1,200 pages. So you're actually missing a good deal of information. But they don't tell you at all what's there and what's not. They just deliver.
Right.
Because they don't have to give you a response. They just have to give you the documents. So they send you a big zip file, or they mail you a big packet in a box. Well, now you've got to spend, or you and your lawyer, or you have to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours going through to figure out, okay, so this was my first request, and this is request number 4, and this is request number 2, and oh, we're missing this and this and this. You have to figure out what they didn't give you. Now, it's easy to figure out what they redacted. You'll see the redactions. That's easy. And it's easy to see, but that's it. It's not easy to see what they didn't give you because they either don't have it because it doesn't exist, or they decided to withhold it. Okay? Those are two different things. Withholding a document and not giving it to you because it doesn't exist are two different things. They need to tell you both. And they don't, almost always. And we nail HOAs for this every single day. We nail them because you cannot do that. The entire point of 5215D is to avoid that actual issue. Right. And they do it on purpose. It's their most nefarious BS that they do. It just pisses me off every day. Right. And I love scoring them over the coals with the judge. I have, oh my, is that fun? Because judges don't like it either. It is complete BS. Okay? And they still do it because that's what their dumb lawyers are telling them to do. And there are a lot of dumb lawyers. And a lot of them seem to work for the HOAs for whatever reason. Not present company included.
Oh, no.
Present company excluded because
right.
you're used to work for that. And you didn't tell your HOAs to do stupid stuff. You said,
no.
You probably said, give them the documents.
Right. No, there are definitely good ones and bad ones. But
more bad ones.
That's a very common one. You're exactly right. I mean, I still see it daily. I mean, almost daily.
Because we do 5200s every day.
Right.
It's a matter of course.
I mean, it still baffles me that it's such a routine practice on the other side.
You would think, though, that the legislature would put a little note at the statute that says, and by the way, HOAs, don't ignore this. I think there should be a $1,000 penalty for ignoring that one statute.
Yeah.
Because that's the cause of so much heartache and problems. Because I'll give you an example. I had a case recently, very recently. We had a case where it was a very small HOA. It's only 6 members of the HOA, of which 4 are on the board. No, 3 are on the board. So half the HOA is on the board, half's not. And there was this dispute between one member, our client, and the other 5 people that live there. And they had a very loosey-goosey, laissez-faire way, like, oh, the rules don't really apply. We'll just kind of do what we want. He's like, no, I bought into here under certain conditions. I want them maintained. Right. And so we asked for documents. They played these games. He did it on his own, made a mess of things. That wasted 6 months. We went and did it, started over, okay? And their idiot lawyer, who's one of these, you find him on the internet if you know, when you're looking for an HOA lawyer, unfortunately, he comes up. He's I would call a single practitioner. I think he's a solo practitioner. Yeah. But he's literally just one of the dumbest human beings that I've ever talked to and had the misfortune of knowing. And he's anything but an expert in HOA law. I won't mention his name. But I can give his initials, right?
Probably best not to, but I know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say that the first initial of his first name is B, and I'll leave it at that. Okay? Just his first name starts with a B. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Now, that person, boy, what a fool. He plays all these games. Played them with my client before we got involved. Then played them more and more and more when we got involved. And then with the 5215, I reminded him when we got a big pile of documents, I said right off, without even opening, the zip file yet, I said, FYI, because he had noted that when my client was asking for certain documents, well, there are documents here you're not entitled to, documents that you are. We'll produce the ones that you are. And I wrote and said, well, we're doing it all over again. Here's what we want. But to the extent that you still believe that there are documents in my list to which my clients are not entitled, I would ask you up front to comply with 5215D and identify specifically the documents you're withholding. Yeah. And we also knew, by the way, that they're supposed to have a meeting every month. There was probably 2 or 3 meetings a year. So we knew that a lot of the minutes didn't exist, right? So I said, and to the extent that documents don't exist because there are no minutes, for example, I expect you to tell me the reason we don't get June, July, August, September, December is because they don't exist. Not just not say anything. His response was, I will do as the code requires. I said, great. So you're going to do exactly what I just said. It's another way of saying that because I'm quoting you the code, you moron. Documents come, no explanation for anything. We didn't have any redacted documents, but there were dozens and dozens of documents not included. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots not included. And I wrote back to this moron, and I said, hey, moron, you're not complying with the law.
Yeah.
Point is, my goal, I wanted him sanctioned personally. Now, he ended up getting out of the case before it went to the hearing, unfortunately. I think either he quit or the HOA fired his moron butt. But either way, and by the way, this HOA, for him to do that, that is like really at the bottom of the barrel. That's like the blind leading the blind. But the point is that's not going to fly. We're going to nail you every time, and we're going to get sanctions. And we did. And we always will. You can't do it. And that's the most common game that HOAs play.
Right.
They take advantage of 5215. And they hope that you're not going to either notice or bother spending all that time to figure out what they didn't give you. It's a lot harder to prove a negative. I had one lawyer from Farmers, okay, because they turned it over to their insurance company.
Yeah.
I had one lawyer from Farmers try to tell me, well, why don't, we want to comply. Why don't you tell me the documents that were missing? And I'll go to my client. And I said, I appreciate at least that we're engaging.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do that. It's not my job to do that. I'm not going to charge my clients for me to tell you. And we already had, my client did the analysis for me. He's one of those people that I could trust to do it. He's like an accountant type. He did the analysis. He didn't want to pay me to do it. And I was okay with that. I trusted him. But it's not my job to tell you what you didn't do. You go through the pile you sent. You figure it out. You charge your client. And then you tell them what to produce.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Oh, insurance companies, by the way, are the biggest perpetrators of we've got your file and we've opened up a file. Could you please provide us with some, and they ask for some information. I ignore those. I never respond. You know why? I complied. 5200 demand. There it is. That's all I'm giving you. You do the rest. I'm not here to make your job easier because you got this 22 days into the 30 days is when it landed on your desk.
Yeah, you're not going to get a reset.
No reset.
Yeah.
30 days, baby.
Yeah.
I ignore them. To the extent that I respond, I say, I appreciate you getting back to me 22 days after this was served. And I'm not necessarily blaming you. I don't know how long it took your client to run it up the flagpole or however long it took to get to an adjuster to you. That's your business. But I'm not going to extend this timeline here to let you guys come up to speed on the file. You have 8 days to comply or I'm going to take legal action. Deal with it. That's great watching. Insurance companies aren't equipped for that. So we always end up going to filing something and they always end up having to pay us because we're going to keep this on calendar and have the court hear it unless you pay us every dime of our fees, right? So I love it when insurance companies get involved because it's a guaranteed check. So, and they pay. It's cost of doing business. They pay. So it's great when they get involved. But bottom line, there's a lot we can do here. You don't want to let them have their way because you give them an inch, they're going to take 10 miles, okay? Now, before we go into, let's talk about the caution of their own demands. The do-it-yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And then we'll talk about, I'll tell you what, let's go through the do-it-yourself.
Okay.
Let's go through why we don't do that.
Sure.
Why we don't recommend that. And then we'll go through a properly constructed 5200 real quick.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then how to escalate, what their options are.
Okay.
Okay? Do it yourself.
Yeah.
Walk me through the myriad reasons why. This is the one thing where we tell clients, don't do a 5200, and same with ADR demand.
Right.
IDR demand, go for it. More power to you. ADR demand, and go watch I have a previous episode on this, or maybe it's not. Maybe I haven't posted it yet. It's coming out, or I just released it. I can't remember which. But on the difference between an ADR demand and an IDR, or a regular demand letter and an ADR demand letter.
Right.
Regular demand letters you can do because those are a waste of time.
Yeah.
ADR demands, let the lawyer do it. And 5200, please let the lawyer do it.
Right.
But talk to me about
extensive list of possible pitfalls. The most common ones we encounter are when they substitute their own words for what the statute actually requires. So rather than using the operative words and itemized individual requests pursuant to the statute, 5200 specifically, and its subsections, they use their own words. They come up with their own stuff. They ask the HOA for things that they may not be entitled to, and that's one of their favorites. On the
and
other
they
side.
Mix and match.
They mix and match, so it creates ambiguity. And then, two other things that come to mind. One, they're not citing to the specific code provisions
for each
specific
request.
one, each request. So they're kind of doing themselves a disservice to the point you made about each individual one preserving the right to seek.
And what I mean by each individual one is like you'd be like 5200, subsection 2G or 5200 subsection 2H, and then R, and then P. We are very specific. But you know what else I notice is a lot of them do is they don't have I always include a default date. So unless otherwise specifically stated, the date of this request is from this and this, like 23 through the present, right? Lay people forget that. And that you have an ambiguity. How far back do I need to go? I don't know what to do. I can't comply. Am I supposed to go back 100 years? I can't. I don't know what to do.
I've seen some go back 10 years. Some of them
Which you can't do.
Some of them ask for the HOA to synthesize documents that don't exist.
Which
so
you
basically,
can't do.
Take all of this and provide me this. And you're not entitled to that.
I want a summary of the blah, blah, blah. Well, if a summary doesn't already exist, you don't get a summary.
That's exactly right.
You summarize it.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a great way for them to go, no.
And
if you mix it in with, I want bank records, and a summary of all the bank records, well, we can't comply with this demand.
Right.
Because you asked for one little thing that wasn't legal, we can't comply with this demand. Because they don't have to parse it. They don't have to say, okay, we'll give you the bank records and we'll give you these, but you're not entitled to that. They could just say, this demand as written, we can't respond to. Right. And now you've just gave them an out.
A funny one that comes to mind is individual board members' private bank account records. You're not entitled to that. I mean, I get that a lot, actually.
Have you? I haven't seen that.
I want to see their individual bank records. To see,
I've never seen that.
Yeah. So this is kind of obviously what they're going.
Oh, maybe I did. I once had somebody say, I want to see if they've gotten money from the HOA, if there was deposits made into their personal account. I did see that.
Or
once.
Purported expenses and where they were getting a reimbursement, right?
Right.
So obviously that.
I want the copy of when a reimbursement, but I also want to see their bank records to see what was put in.
Right.
To see if there was cash deposit. Yeah, you don't get that.
No.
Right.
Yeah, so it's quite a few. We see some colorful stuff.
So also there's we cite to various provisions of the Davis-Sterling Act to support each and every issue. We talk about the penalties for noncompliance. We talk about the deadlines. We talk about the redaction thing from 5215.
Yeah.
5200 is just one of a long line of statutes in the 5200s, right? We cite lots of provisions, including the attorney's fees clause. We cite a lot of provisions to make it very clear to this HOA, we know what we're doing. And they already know us. They know who we are at this point. But we know what we're doing, and you're not getting away with anything. Right. Where do you think you're going? Said the shark to the seal, right? So, bottom line, you get what you pay for in this world. Don't do a 5200 on your own, because as good as you think you might have it, you're not going to do a good job. You're just not. And the thing is, you can't Google this, because the few that might be on Google were probably put up by morons like Mr. B that I just talked about. Yeah. You're not going to find it. So,
well, one good barometer is like if they're being so obstructionist and difficult with HOA attorneys who specialize in this area of law, how are they going to treat the average homeowner?
Well, they're gonna make mincemeat of you and play games. Yeah. 6 months down the line, you still won't have anything. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, our demands, I don't have to spend too much time on it. We've kind of covered it already, but we're very specific. We break out each like if I'm talking about bank records, that's not one. I want bank statements, statute. I want canceled checks, statute. It might be the same statute, by the way, for several of these. Yeah. Right? But I want different categories because I want extra $500 for ones that they don't give me. Okay? Yeah. I break it out. And every single request has the statute supporting my right to that document genre. And if you can't come up with the statute, then you're not entitled to the document. That's the barometer. Right. If you can't clearly, in that statute, see your right to that document, then don't ask for it.
And by the way, that makes it easier when you itemize it methodically, right? All legitimate requests, cites to individual statutes, even if it's the same statute, but you're parsing it out.
Yeah, you could have 6 same sites.
It helps a mediator. It helps a judge.
It helps a jury. It helps whatever it is.
It's methodical.
So let's move into that.
Yeah.
Is it a judge? Is it a jury? Is it a small claims judge? Okay. So you have 3 options. Your HOA, you sent out a properly worded at 5200 demand. Well written. So written by me. Okay. Yeah. All right. You've got a timeline has expired. You've got typical excuses and garbage that HOAs like to throw at you. Okay. And they shine you on. They tell you to pound sand. They ignore you. They play games, or they give you half the documents you're entitled to. They don't explain the missing ones. They don't abide by 5215. What do? Well, you got 3 options. Okay. Let's go with option number 1. Take them to small claims court. Small claims court, you get money damages, penalties, statutory penalties. You're not going to get attorney's fees because you didn't incur any. Okay. You're going to get the statutory penalties. You're going to convince the court that these reach separate demands, $500 per, boom, boom, boom. But you don't get an order that they're supposed to be produced by a certain time, you just have money. Now, I suppose you could start over and keep doing that until they learn, in which case that's probably okay. That'll work in certain ways. So that is viable, okay? Option 2, you do an ADR demand and you go through the 4-month-long process, and then if that doesn't, at mediation, you don't get what you want, plus every dime you spent on your lawyers, because I wouldn't let it go, then you sue, you file a lawsuit, and now you're talking lawsuit money. That's a lot of money, okay? Yes, you get your attorney's fees if you prevail, and they don't. That's fine, unless it's frivolous, which yours wouldn't be. But that seems like a long time. So I reject option 2, unless you have a bunch of other things to sue for and you're going to throw that in. Then, yeah, that makes sense. Right. Option 3 is the one I like the best, and that is you take advantage of California's writ system, okay? Now, there's a split in authority in California of the trial judges. I don't think the appellate court's ever handled this, as to whether or not ADR is required before you go on a writ. The code, especially parts of the government code that work with the Davis-Sterling Act to create the process for the writ. And a writ is just, you want to appear before the court in the term. It's like filing a lawsuit. You get a new case number and a judge assigned, but it's a motion. So you're done in a couple months. You're done. Done. It's not a full-blown trial. There's no discovery. It's a motion. They file an opposition. You file a reply. You're done. Now, small claims works, but you
limited. Yeah,
it's a little more limited.
Yeah.
The writ process is great because the judge can slam the other side, give you your attorney's fees, give you your penalties, and order them to produce the documents within a certain period of time, or to the extent they don't exist, tell you why. And I think that covers it. Bottom line is, folks, 5200 is what I call the hidden gem of the Davis-Sterling Act. It gives homeowners a wide array of documents for a pretty easy methodology of getting them, and it attaches some substantial disincentives on the part of the HOA to ignore you. Now, they play games, and they'll play more. The more games, the more weaknesses your demand has, the more games they'll play. It's a direct relationship. They play less games with us than they would with another lawyer, and they'll play less games with that lawyer than they would with a layperson. But eventually, you got to pay the piper, and they end up having to pay the piper. So take advantage of this, because only through 5200 can you hold your HOA accountable. I'm Michael Kushner. This has been HOA Hell. If you enjoyed this podcast or this episode, please hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel, HOA Hell. If you'd like to leave a comment or ask a question, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Until next time, have a wonderful day.